Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. In the last where we started off the game, and now we're gonna go actually finish it off because, of course, being a licensed tie-in, this isn't a very long game to begin with. Not that many Genesis games are super long to begin with outside of things like Shining Force. So round 4 is the other contender for worst set of stages in the game, because while its enemies are less annoying than the zombies in the graveyard, even though the zombies are actually still in this, the level design's what's annoying here, because this is a giant cave system with several caves you need to actively press up to enter and just search for the kids that way. It's not like the usual doors we've been seeing in the previous stages or the bushes or things like that. There's also a lot of hidden caves here you need to check. They are marked in one of two ways, either the weird little spider sigil that's not like the actual spiders, you just press up on those and they'll open, or a no dancing sigil, which you need to spin in front of to get rid of. A bit weird to actually have two different ones, but oh well, I guess they wanted to have maybe a hazard or I guess a stage element you could both interact with by just pressing up or spinning in every single stage aesthetic probably. Also, to talk again about the soundtrack, I know I mentioned last time Jackson wasn't apparently a big fan of the Genesis' sound fonts, but out of all of the songs in the game, I think Billie Jean here adapts the best to the sound font. I think I like Beat It more still, but I think this is the most direct one-to-one. Yeah, that's a good fit for it kind of sound to it. Sure, it still has a bit of that Genesis twang that sounds a little bit like a wet fart, but if you're not a game titled Sonic the Hedgehog in some form with the Genesis, it's really hard to get around that, it seems. Also, something I haven't mentioned yet, the soldier enemies. We've been seeing them since I think the second round of stages in the game. What's annoying about them is that their main attack is to fire a laser at you, but they can do it either high or low. If they do it high, you can just duck under it, which is no problem, but if they do it low, you actively have to jump over it, and the timing for that can be a little precise. For now, though, let's take a look at the dance attack for this area. In the case you actually use the dance attack to take care of the max of 8 enemies at a time, it is ridiculously satisfying. I actually wish more games had a way to do something like that if they were this style of platformer beat-em-up mix. Not many have that level of screen nuke. Usually it's just like, alright, the screen's gonna flash and then things are dead. But usually in those types of games, the max enemies on screen are usually like 4 or 5. Being able to do 8 is ridiculous. For now, let's actively go out of our way to read what's in the manual, though, namely its story section, because this is one of the games at the time that just didn't put an intro cutscene in. All of its plot is in the manual. Mind you, if you've seen the movie or listened to me last part, I basically describe what's going on in this part of the movie to begin with. Goodbye, world peace. Mr. Big, the psycho mastermind of crime, is wiping out love on our planet. He and his goons are kidnapping every child on Earth. Mr. Big plans to brainwash all these innocent children and turn them into his slaves. Mr. Big is the ultimate bad guy, and no one knows how to stop him until superstar Michael Jackson, alias Moonwalker, the champion of love and peace, takes charge. Sorry, that paragraph kind of surprised me. So you're telling me Michael was directly involved in making the game as well as making the movie, huh? Getting back to that. Only Michael can rescue the children and demolish Mr. Big and his hoods. To do it, Michael summons his star magic, the superpower sent to him on a shooting star. With moves only he can make, Michael spins, leaps, kicks, and dances. He searches everywhere from the shady business ends of Club 30 to the tough, rough streets. Gangsters, thugs, and graveyard ghouls leap in his way. In the caverns, poison spiders lurk. But Michael outmagics them all. At last, in the technoid towers of Mr. Big's hideout, Michael faces his greatest challenge and summons his most stupendous powers. Be Michael, and save our precious planet from falling into the nasty grasp of Mr. Big. There's a part of me that misses 90s manuals and how ridiculous their versions of taking the game's events can be. I still think my favorite reaction I've ever had for that is when I completely blindly read the manual for Mario is Missing, though, with the acronym that just throws at you out of nowhere. Either way, getting back to the game, something I should actually note about this stage in particular, that's in the first 2 releases of it, revisions 0 and 1 according to the cutting room floor. There is an unintended bug when it comes to jumping downwards through platforms, because like several other platformers, if you press down on the jump button on thin platforms, you will drop through them. In revision 0 and 1, to quote the cutting room floor directly, a bug allows you to fall through multiple platforms without stopping if you attack mid-fall. And this can actively save time in this stage in particular. I actually kind of wish they kept that because that seems like a little fun mechanic abuse, but I guess I get why, because this stage in particular is the only one that's really affected by it, and it's definitely one of the harder stages in the game if you remove that. Because this is the same stuff from 4-1, where we got a bunch of kids we gotta go rescue in scattered caves. But you gotta climb up and down and all around in this level. It's one of the few levels you really cannot end the stage in a position that's really advantageous to go straight to where Bubbles points you for the boss after you rescue whatever the last kid you find is. It's like this in one of the stages in round 5 that's just really bad for that. And I guess that's sort of their way of raising a difficulty curve, and not for nothing, this game does have a bit of a okay difficulty curve, where it starts out easy-ish for how the game controls, but then gets more and more complicated with the more types of enemies they throw at you and all that jazz, on top of the level design getting more complicated. But at the same time, I don't really think this game needed stages like this. Also, some advice for this particular boss fight. Dance for one thing, of course. But use the rocks around you if you can, because those do... I'm not sure if they're instant kill on every enemy, but they at least do enough damage to kill smaller enemies in one shot. Maybe it does like 2 damage versus like your attacks 1, so to speak. I'm not sure the exact damage values behind the scene, and I feel like if someone is, they're a speedrunner, and I'd rather not think about speedrunning this game. Thank you very much, although now I'm curious. Speedrun.com. Moonwalker. Alright, we got times for every single console this is on here. Best time for any percent easy on console for the Genesis version is about 18 minutes. Master System is 16, almost 17 minutes. The arcade version is apparently 13. That about tracks for that type of beat 'em up. And the DOS version? There's a DOS version of this game is 15. I guess this does strike me as one of those games that just get a DOS version because they're like, we might as well try and get it on PC at the time, I guess. I'll have to look into what that looks like, actually, probably like an upcoming cut between commentary bursts. Something to keep in mind about the spider enemies, by the way. Their hitbox is larger than it looks, both for damaging you, but also for you hitting them, because if they're right up in front of you and you crouch down, you're likely to hit them. They're not super annoying to hit unless they're above you at a weird angle. Which is kind of impressive, because usually the small enemies like that, like the birds in Ninja Gaiden, or the bats or Fleamen in Castlevania, are the most annoying enemies to hit. Honestly, I think that goes to the zombies in this, just bar none, because while they're large, when they start jumping, they start getting hard to hit correctly. Okay, so I actually went and did some research in the cut just then to look at the PC version for this, the MS-DOS version. It's not just on DOS. The same version of the game, just with different graphical stuff and musical stuff, obviously, is on Amiga, Atari ST, DOS, in both CGA and EGA, Commodore 64, Amstrad PCs, the ZX Spectrum, and the MSX. And it is a top-down game that looks like it does not control or have very good signposting for what you're meant to do. And also, some versions like the Amiga, they have the music in the game, but it's 5-second loops, which does not work for anything but Smooth Criminal, I find. Some versions have fuller songs, but they also have worse sound quality, so it's like, well, shit. Well, there we go. I learned something new today in recording, and it's that. And I will store that knowledge away in a place where I will never reach it again, because I'll probably never need to think about this game again until I eventually probably do the arcade version 8 years down the line or something like that. For the moment, though, there are 2 other things I should note. There are actively cheat codes for the game, albeit there's only 2 and they're pretty limited. There's one that gives you 15 lives by pressing up, up, down, left, right, AAC at the title screen. And then the other is a level select, where using the second controller, you hold up, left, and A and press start. And then at the press start screen, use controller 1 and then press start. Then when you choose your difficulty, you can select a stage, albeit not the subsection, so you can't go to like specifically 2-2, but you can go to round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the final boss. And you know what, since it's technically the same version of the same game, I'll be just on a lesser console, I might as well go over the level select for the Master System version as well. At the title screen, press down, left, up, right, so 2 full circles starting at the bottom. And then when the stage number is shown, you can press up, down, left, or right to choose your stage. Technically speaking, the arcade version has its own cheats, I believe, as do the various PC versions, but that's not relevant to this particular LP. Maybe if I ever do those other games at some point, maybe, but if I get to a point in doing LPs where I'm doing, like, the Amiga version of Moonwalker specifically or something like that, I think I've run out of things to do, so to speak. I mean, there's a couple of games on those old PCs I'd do. Maybe the Commander Keen games at some point, Jazz Jackrabbit, just to show it off and talk about the historical relevance that has. The Mega Man games on DOS, except for Mega Man X, because no. But if I get to the point where I'm doing stuff like Moonwalker, something I do find kind of odd about round 4-3, by the way, is that's the only final round of a given stage aesthetic that doesn't have a unique enemy type to itself, so to speak. Because, like, round 1 had the super mafia guy. Round 2 had the super dog. Round 3 had the super zombies, because we fought the super zombies in round 3-2. And getting slightly ahead of ourselves, round 5-2 and 5-3 each have their own unique things happening in their final bosses as well. So this one just feels kind of weird in comparison. Oh, also, if you go over the time limit for the score system, you don't actively, like, lose health or anything. It's just you lose score, which doesn't matter now, does it? Round 5 as a whole can be troublesome because there's a lot more chaotic stuff happening around here because the corners are a lot closer between you and the enemy. And also there's a lot more hazards going around. There's a lot of computers you need to actively destroy because they'll send electric sparks along wires between each other. And there's also teleporters you need to press up to use to get from one place to another. Now, the thing that took me the longest to realize about this particular stage type as well is the doors here are a little finicky in that you don't open the door, you open the number pad next to the door, so to speak. You don't press up on the door itself, you press it on the keypad to actually open it. Which I guess is kind of a neat detail, but it definitely gets a little awkward to do in some instances, especially considering you have to get used to that for these 3 stages in specific. Each of the later stages technically have their own hazard added in. The most annoying added hazard here overall in 5-1 is these laser cameras. They'll just fire randomly down and diagonally towards you. And they're kind of hard to get around, although in this particular stage, they're only in like the bottom section of the level, so you don't need to deal with them a lot. 5-2, that won't necessarily be the case. Also, this rendition of Bad is great. Mind you, again, this entire soundtrack is just pretty decent renditions of his music. When I first played it, I did find it a bit weird. Smooth Criminal wasn't like the be-all, end-all final level theme, considering that's like the entire reason why that last part of the movie exists in a lot of regards. Considering that is like a fourth of that entire section of the movie. But at the same time, in that case, you might want to leave with it because that's what people are there for in some regards. It's one of those cases where it's like, either you do it first or last, but don't do it in the middle either way. That just wouldn't make sense at all. Mind you, not that like licensed games tended to care with that back during the 80s and 90s. They just did whatever they needed to. If anything, in the long term, compared to a lot of the other licensed games out there, this one is actually pretty playable. I especially think about, there was this Lilo and Stitch sort of beat 'em up, sort of Mega Man-like I had growing up on my Game Boy Advanced. I don't think I ever got past the second level in that. That's gotta be a game I eventually do as an LP, just so I can get revenge on it, probably. That and Rocky and Bullwinkle in the Game Boy, which I think I've been saying that for a couple of years now, but oh well. I'll get to it eventually. Stage 5-2 is a little interesting in that in a lot of regards it's the last normally structured stage in the game. But it's also where the laser cameras come in at their most annoying. Thankfully, compared to some other games, you can actually destroy hazards like that by just doing an upwards attack. A little awkward to hit, but they go down in one shot. If anything, the bigger annoyance in this stage is that we got conveyor belts and trapdoors that you can fall through. Not because they'll damage you, but because you'll have to go back through level design with enemies that basically spawn infinitely. And not that the enemies are super annoying, but it's annoying enough that's gonna be like, ah, damn it, I gotta go through all that again. Thankfully, just because of this game's level structure, there's not a lot of backtracking to do to begin with, so it's not the worst. It's not like, what immediately comes to mind is some stages in like Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 and 3, or, oh god, especially Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64, where if you fall down, you have to spend like 6 minutes getting back around the level if you didn't find the right place to go, or the right warp panel and all of that, and oh man, oh, I hate stuff like that. Vertically structured levels like that are my enemy in basically any regard. If anything, that's why I don't mind bottomless pits or the Contra Pac-Man syndrome, where when you're going upwards, what's below you is bottomless pit. If anything, I might prefer that in the long run. At least when it comes to straight-up platformers. New enemy in the boss fight for this stage is the same guys we've been fighting before, but now they are green and have more health. But because they actively throw 3 of them at you, you can get a little overwhelmed, but because of these enemies and how they only attack by firing their lasers, compared to the zombies jumping, you can take care of them pretty quickly. Obviously, contact damage is still technically a thing, but they're a lot easier to get around, I find, than the zombies. With these guys out of the way, though, we're going to be on our way to the actual final normal level of the game. It's just that the way that the next level ends is a little atypical compared to the others. Also, might just be an optical illusion, but I swear moonwalking on the conveyor belt is faster than actually walking against the flow, which, if that's actually true, that's kind of cool and funny, I won't lie. Always found it weird, though, that the moonwalk of all things was put into Super Metroid, and there's only a few use cases for it, period, I find. And most of them are with, like, oh, if you do this at this very specific point, you can do some neat stuff with it, but it's ultimately not the best thing to use. Although, if anything, this level is a nice return to the more open level design from particularly round 2. So you don't have to worry as much about enemies clustering around you in tight quarters. You got a nice place around you, a nice flat floor and all that. Jumping from building to building to get some of the kids can be kind of annoying in some cases, especially when it's kind of hard to spot the platforms in the background of the purple wall. It took me like 5 minutes to find those on my first playthrough. But overall, like, it's not too bad, especially once you actually rescue the final kid, in which case you're treated to sort of a victory lap in the long run. I won't lie though, having gotten a lot more games under my belt since I first played this in the far off year of like 2009 or 10, a part of this stage kind of visually reminds me of the Cyber Shinobi on the Master System. It's mostly the dark sky with the stars up here at the top with how the platforming looks. It's just a very bizarre, oh wow, that takes me back to that scenario. And that's not a game I like to think about much at all. That's probably my least favorite of the Shinobi games. Also, hey look, that new Shinobi game looks like it might be neat whenever we see more of it. Alright, so the boss of 5-3 is actively more of a victory round because you've gotten through a majority of the game, because they give you a free Robo-Jackson for this. This is just go ham with your lasers and spread bombs and kill everything in sight. And it doesn't overstay its welcome either. You're ultimately invincible here. You can do nothing to lose. There's still a way to get a game over, because as I've said, there is 5 rounds, and then there's a round 6 that's by and large a final boss. But yeah, do whatever you can. I'm not even sure if this is like timed or anything. I'm not sure if it's like a pure kill count. I'm assuming it's a kill count scenario. But yeah. I actually kind of appreciate the game for doing this. I appreciate a game that goes, alright, yeah, you got through the bullshit. Here, have this on us. More games need to do that, honestly. Oh, also, I actually had to just look back through all the footage to make sure if I never showed this off. But if you actually try to use your magic spells while you're too low on health, they won't let you kill yourself with it. Michael just does the pants grab instead, and thanks, I guess. That's the final level done, though. Congratulations, you defeated all of Mr. Big's henchmen. You've escaped from the traps Mr. Big has set for you. You rescued all of the children Mr. Big kidnapped. Now it's time for the final challenge. You versus Mr. Big. The boss for this one's a little weird, where you're actually in a spaceship shooter since you're trying to hit Mr. Big in the distance. He's the green ship you're trying to hit. If you look on the bottom right, you can actually see an indicator of where he is at all times. You need to keep him in the white square in order to have even a chance of hitting him. And you need to sort of aim with the top middle of the screen to try and hit him from there. His health is marked on the bottom left of the screen. It's the 8 blue boxes around him. Hit him 8 times and you're done. He's constantly throwing enemies at you on top of shooting you himself to try and take your HP down, and your HP can drain pretty quickly in this. But ultimately, like, there's harder final bosses. There's more final bosses that are even just glitchier and more annoying to deal with. Once you get them in a lock, you're pretty good in the long run. Ultimately, it's easy. And he's dead. We're a murderer. We killed a man. Congratulations! And that's Moonwalker. The soundtrack kicks ass, of course it does. And there's way worse licensed games out there, but there's also way better. It's just kind of okay for one of those. The novelty's kind of funny, but nowadays, I'd say just play any other game, really. And that's not even getting into the controversies I have kind of danced around talking about, because that's not what this channel's about. But with that, I'm going to need to end this LP off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.